Okay, okay.
All right. So on Yontif, we are allowed to do any cooking that we need for Yontif, because it says in the Torah that you're allowed to do whatever you need for to eat, you're allowed to do on Yontif. What about things that you don't need for your to eat, but you do need for other reasons? Let's say you need, for example, to have a shofar, Rosh Hashanah, in the shul, there's no shofar there. Well, let's say you don't have a lulav. Are you allowed to bring the shofar and lulav to shul? So the Mishnah says in Masechta Beitza and Daf Bais Bezalel, Yeshamai says, you're not allowed to take out a child if you want to go for a walk, or a lulav, or a sefer Torah. You need to have the lulav, you need the sefer Torah. You're not allowed to. And Beis Hillel says you are. What's the reason of Beis Hillel? Torah only says you're allowed to move something for the sake of eating. You're not eating the child, you're not eating the lulav, you're not eating the sefer Torah. So Beis Hillel says that he has a tradition that he received. Since the Torah, just in time. Since the Torah allows us to, have a seat. Since the Torah allows us to take something outside into a public domain on Yontif for the need of food, like you got to carry food on Yontif. So therefore, the tradition says Beis Hillel, they received that from a tradition that you're allowed to do things on Yontif, even if there's not a direct need to eat. Since once the Torah already allowed us to do things for the sake of eating, they also allowed us to do things which are not directly for the sake of eating. For example, we're allowed to do things for the sake of a mitzvah, or for the sake of enjoyment, even though there's not a direct need to eat. That's what Beis Hillel says, and that's the halacha. There are two other places in the Gemara where we find this argument. There's another argument between Beis and Beis Hillel, the Mishnah of Chafal from Beis. Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to warm up water for your feet. You want to clean your feet, unless you're able to drink that water. Beis Hillel says you can. Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to make a bonfire to warm up on Yontif, and Beis Hillel says you can, because Beis Hillel's general tradition is called mitoich. In the yeshiva world, it's very common to use just that one word to convey this idea. Mitoich. Since it's allowed for one thing, it's allowed for other things. So just because the Torah made it permissible explicitly for the sake of eating, it doesn't only mean for eating. You're allowed to do this for anything that is necessary on Yontif for a mitzvah or necessary for your body. But it has to be necessary for Yontif. In other words, although Beis Hillel says the words of Beis Hillel are, you're allowed to do something even if there's no need, those are his words. It's mutter afil shaloy tzorech, it's mutter even if there's no need, but that's qualified. The Gemara says, Tosfos asks a question. The Gemara says if you cook something on Yontif for the sake of eating it after Yontif, so if you cooked something, let's say Yontif Shavuos morning, you wake up in the morning of Shavuos morning, you say, hey, I want to have some, I don't have enough cheesecake for after Yontif, I want to make some cheesecake now for after Yontif. So it's not biblically forbidden, because it's possible that people will come, you'll have guests that come to you on Yontif, and your guests will want to eat that food. So it's possible that it's not solely for post-Yontif, and therefore it's not forbidden biblically. But if you bake something on Yontif, and it'll only be ready after Yontif, then it is biblically forbidden to bake that on Yontif, because you're only allowed to do things which are for the sake of Yontif. But Tosfos says, if you do something for tomorrow only, and it's impossible to benefit from it today, it is biblically forbidden. If it's possible to benefit from it today, although that's not your intent, it's rabbinically forbidden. But if it's impossible to benefit from it, you started cooking it, towards the end of Yontif, then it is biblically forbidden to eat even, it's biblically forbidden to do. So, and this is, again, this is what the Mishnah says, it has to have Tosfos, this is what Tosfos says. It has to have some kind of benefit on Yontif. It's not allowed to just do something that you're going to benefit for after Yontif. It has to have some benefit right now on Yontif. What is this benefit? So it has to, again, be something for the need of a mitzvah or for the need of enjoyment. But for the next day, it's biblically forbidden. So this is very pertinent, halachically. Are you allowed to take a key out on Yontif and go to Daven Mincha, and you're not planning to come back home until after Yontif is over? So why taking the key out? It would seem that it would be forbidden to hold that key on Yontif because you're not going to use it till after Yontif. But it's possible that, as we'll see, that the prohibition extends to other things as well, that you even would use on Yontif. For example, if you find something on Yontif, you're not allowed to that you want it, that will be beneficial for you after Yontif. You're not allowed to move it on Yontif, even though the need of the thing itself is not considered preparing for after Yontif. You want to protect the specific item. However, since you're not doing this for the sake of Yontif, you're not allowed to do this malacha. There's two different prohibitions. There's one prohibition, like for example, let's say we're going to have a party after Yontif. I'm not allowed to arrange the tables in my house for the sake of the party after Yontif. Why not? Because that's going to be mechem Yontif l'chil. I'm preparing from Yontif to the weekday. I'm not doing a malacha. I'm not doing a biblical prohibition. I'm just moving tables around. That's not one of the 39 malachas that are forbidden on Shabbos or Yontif. But if I were to carry something in the street, which is biblically forbidden to do, and I'm doing this because of this item that I discovered on Yontif, that would be a problem. So what about if I have a siddur? Can I bring my siddur to shul? So that's a mitzvah. I have a need for it in Yontif. I want to bring my machzor or shoshana to shul. I could bring it to shul because I'm carrying this siddur in a public domain for the sake of a mitzvah. That's fine. But can I bring the siddur back home? I brought the siddur to shul to daven. Can I bring the siddur back home? Why do I bring the siddur back home? I'm going to leave it in shul. You know, Beryl has an eye and nice machzerim. He likes nice machzerim, so Beryl might rip off my machzer. So I want to bring that siddur back home so that, no, you don't like my one rip off. Okay, I want to bring my machzer back home because I'm afraid it might get stolen. Can I bring my machzer back home? So it's not at all for the sake of Yontif. But the Alter Rebbe says in Siman Tov Kuf Yud Ches Aleph, he says like this: Although we learned that you're allowed to do things which are not directly related to eating, as long as there's some kind of benefit. But here, if you need to go to shul and you want to walk outside and you can't leave your child alone, so it'll be allowed to take your child with you, or you want to take your siddur with you to shul, that'll be okay. But then he says, you're also allowed to bring it back home. Why? Even though when you bring it back home, it's not accomplishing anything for Yontif, because you're only bringing it home because you don't want it to get stolen. However, what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen? I know what you're going to do. I'm not bringing my machzor to shul because I can't bring it back. So Alter Rebbe says that works. Alter Rebbe says in order that you shouldn't be prevented from bringing your siddur to shul, they allowed you to bring your siddur back home. So therefore, you can bring your siddur back home because otherwise you won't bring it to shul. That's why it's okay. This is all if we don't hold the erev. If you hold the erev, there's no issue. But that's a different subject. I'm talking about a situation where there is no erev, or if you don't hold the erev. In general, the Rebbe said that there could be a lot of problems making an erev, because you make an erev in a big city. If the erev goes down, then people get used to carrying. They don't even know that there's a problem with carrying because they carry every week. And although the words get out, but there are a lot of people that, it happened already more than once. The erev was down, and everything. And I remember also that in addition to that problem, it's also it's hard to maintain, period, and it's hard and it's costly. But the Rebbe's issue, I think, if I understood it correctly, I didn't look into this subject before the class, so I don't I may not convey this correctly. I understood is the issue wasn't just there are halachic issues there. In other words, there are many halachic issues in creating an eruv. That's a different subject. There are many different opinions about making an eruv. That wasn't the issue. The issue was, if I understood it correctly, was that whatever level of kosher the eruv is, which are there's lots of opinions. If eruv goes down, people know about it. If people are aware that there is an eruv, and they may not be aware that the eruv is down, and then they'll end up carrying it. It's not worth it for that time that will happen. Yes. Right. I totally get that. Yes, 100%. So many good benefits to get people. Absolutely. Together with the Jewish people. No question about it. No question about it. But the argument is, if it's right, if it's right. If it's not right, then in other words, let's say I know that if I go to shul on Yom Kippur, it's gonna be hard for me to fast, and I have to break my. What does the Torah say? Go to shul and daven, or stay home and fast. The Torah says stay home and fast. If you're gonna have to break your fast by walking to shul, then you're gonna get hot. You're gonna be dehydrated, and you're gonna be dangerous. The Torah says stay home. I know. You're right. I'm just pointing out that we're not like Robin Hood. We don't believe that like other religions believe that the end justifies the means. We just believe the truth is the truth, and that's it. Okay. So, but there are opinions. I'm not saying that there is only one opinion. Okay. So, so there are two scenarios where you're allowed to do something on Yontif. One is again for the sake of a mitzvah, and the other is for the sake of the benefit of your body. So, if the siddur wasn't brought to shul on Yontif, then you're not allowed to bring it back home, unless you use that siddur at home. But the Alter Rebbe says you're only allowed to bring it back home because you're afraid you might not bring it to shul. But if you found it in shul, I found my machzor, bring it back home. That's an issue, unless you need your machzor at home. But technically, you could bring it home and you'll use it at home. It's similar to like baking. The halacha is biblically, you're allowed to bake in the morning because maybe guests will come. So although rabbinically that's forbidden, but if there's a scenario where your intent is to use it that day, you'd be like you're allowed to bake. Your intent is you are thinking the guests. If you're actually thinking the guests will come, not just you might have like randomly this onslaught of guests. They actually are thinking guests might come. Then you're allowed to bake in the morning of Yontif for that purpose. So you can bake on that. Thinking you can bake bread for the Yontif. Right. 100%. Yes. You could bake on Yontif. Yes, 100%, because you need it for that day. Elder, have a seat. We're almost done. Don't worry. Enjoy life a little bit. Okay. So, what about if you want to invite a non-Jew to your house on Yontif? Can you invite a non-Jew to join your Yontif meal? This is a very common question because there are many times there are many rabbis or scenarios where they have to invite couples who are intermarried and they want to, and there's a scenario there. The problem is the Chachamim said it's forbidden to invite a non-Jew to your house on Yontif. Why is it forbidden? Because you might end up cooking for his sake. The Torah says you're allowed to cook for the sake of Yontif, for the sake of eating on Yontif. A non-Jew does not have an obligation to eat on Yontif. You're not allowed to cook for him. Only cook for someone who has to eat on Yontif. He has no mitzvah of eating, and therefore we're not allowed to invite. So even on, let's say Yontif is tomorrow night, I can't invite a non-Jew tonight to come to my house tomorrow night, because what might end up happening is that tomorrow night I'll see, there's not enough kugel for my friend Barry. So I'm going to go add, I lost thinking Barry's a Jewish name. Pick another name, Rabbi. Okay, fine. Whatever. Okay, fine. It's also a Jewish name. I'm sorry. Anyways, so I'm not allowed to invite him tomorrow night, and I'll cook everything tonight. And I'm inviting him for tomorrow night. But the Chachamim made a decree. You're not allowed to do this because what's going to end up happening, you're going to end up wanting to honor him, and you might end up wanting to add something to your pot for his sake. You might, and therefore you're going to cook on Yontif and not cook on Yontif, and you might not put up another pot for his sake. For
the sake of the Yomtov.
Right. Right. So you're only at a bake for the sake of Yomtov, not for the sake of non-Jew. It's not obligated to the mitzvah of Yomtov. And a similar way, what happens if he comes to your house, though? He ends up coming to your house. You didn't invite him. You invited his wife, and she ended up bringing him. So halacha is, you don't have to say, oh, you can't eat, because you don't have to do that. Once he comes to your house, you're allowed to feed him. But the only problem is with inviting him. But once he comes, you're allowed to let him eat as well. There's no issue with feeding the a person who has come to your house. The issue is with inviting him. It gets very complicated with Passover reservations. People reserve for a Seder, and they're registered, and it's not such a simple question. You're also not allowed to send food for the non-Jew. I can invite you. I want to send you some food, and you ask your child, hey, go bring this to this. You can't do that, because just like you're not allowed to cook for him, not allowed to carry for him either. And just like, so it's any time it's not for the sake of eating on Yontiv, it has to be either for the sake of a mitzvah or for the sake of the benefit of the body. And here, you don't have either. A similar scenario would be, let's say you want to have your pet. You want to cook for the sake of your pet. You can't cook for the sake of your pet on Yontiv. Your pet. Your animal, yeah.
Well, we're getting more lenient in today's time, right?
Well,
with the
Gentiles. Well, there are scenarios where you would try to find a allowance to do things, and there are certain situations where you wouldn't be able to do those things. But right now, we're getting the basic principles of how this works. But just for right now, the simple halacha is you can't invite anybody directly, and you can't. And if you did, if they came, you're allowed to feed them. So you can't like send a text. Hey Barry, come over. Barry, and you could say, okay. Also, you're not allowed to have any kind of benefit for your body on Yontif. Not all benefits of the body are permissible. The Rogachev Goyen, the famous genius, the Reis of Rosen, the rabbi of Rogachev, ever said he's a rabbi of a genius of millennia. He has been a genius like him in hundreds of years. He once was addressing the question of smoking on Yontif. You're allowed to do things which are for the benefit of the body, but the Alter Rebbe uses the expression on Yontif. Thank you. Allowed to smoke allowed to smoke. Is that considered benefit or not? The halach is you're allowed to do things which are beneficial for the body that you enjoy. The language of the Alter Rebbe and Shulchan Aruch is things which are all people enjoy. Shavel chol nefesh, that everybody enjoys. Not everybody enjoys smoking. So Rogachev Goyen says that he can't answer this question. Only someone who smokes can answer the question. Only someone who smokes can say that this is a need or not. I do remember that regarding Rosh Hashanah, people are more careful than the rest of other Yom Tovim. Those are more lenient about smoking. Other Yom Tovim are careful on Rosh Hashanah not to smoke. But not all mitzvahs are also permissible. Just because something is a mitzvah doesn't mean you're allowed to do it on Yom Tov either. For example, the halacha is that once a sacrifice is supposed to be brought one day, and it's not brought that day, the sacrifice has to be burnt. So someone offered a sacrifice yesterday and they didn't eat it. It's called noiser. Noiser has to be burnt. Can you burn the sacrifice on Yom Tov? So halacha is you can't. Why? It's a mitzvah. Didn't we say allowed to burn things, to do things which are for the sake of a mitzvah? And it's a mitzvah. Once a sacrifice has been left overnight, it's a mitzvah to burn it. So can you burn the sacrifice now after it's been left over there? Huh? No. So the sacrifice is brought on Friday, let's say on Thursday, or more accurately, it's brought on Wednesday, and now it's already Friday, and you want to burn it because it wasn't burned yet. Can you burn it now in Yontif? So, or let's say a bris. A bris was not done on time, and now it's Yontif. Can you do a mitzvah? It's a mitzvah. We said for the sake of a mitzvah, you let it carry a shefer, you let it carry a lulav. So why can't you do a bris on Yontif? A bris, if a bris is on time, you could do it on Shabbos. If it's not on time, why can't you do a bris on Yontif? We don't do it. Why not? So the Alter Rebbe says you can't do anything, any mitzvah, it's not connected to today. If a mitzvah can be done at any time, and you haven't done it yet, you can't do it on Yontif. If the mitzvah has a connection today, like a shofar, like a lulav, that's a mitzvah for today, that you can't push off. That pushes off Yontif. You got to carry that on Yontif. You got to carry a shofar on Yontif. But to give a circumcision, you can't. And so the same is with the burning the sacrifice. Sacrifice can be burned at any time. You didn't burn it yesterday, so burn it tomorrow. Why burn it on Yontif? But anyways, the elder, there were 2 days Yontif in the time of the Gemara. Just there were also 1 day Yontif. So it depends on where you live. Okay. So only a mitzvah which is connected to today can be done on Yontif. What happens like this? What happens if you had a chametz and you didn't burn the chametz, and now it's Pesach, now it's Yontif? Can you burn the chametz on Yontif? That mitzvah has to be done right away. Every second that you have the chametz in your possession, you're transgressing the prohibition of chametz. So are you allowed to do that? So the truth is that in our sale for chametz, we first of all we declare all our chametz ownerless. Then we sell all chametz that we know of and we don't know of to a non-Jew, and therefore it's not so clear that you're actually transgressing something on Yontif if you sold your chametz, even though it's hard, it's questionable because you can't sell something you don't really know about. But we wouldn't say you're obligated to go burn it on Yontif as a mitzvah because it's not a real obligation in the sense. It's not an absolutely clear obligation because it's possible the chametz you have isn't really yours. But let's say you baked on Yontif with flour and water, and you baked chametz. And now you've now for sure transgressed the prohibition of chametz. You now have chametz in your possession. What do you do with it? You can't declare it ownerless because the Torah says that although chametz is something which you can't really own in the first place because you're not allowed to enjoy chametz. You don't have any benefit from chametz. And whenever you're not allowed to have benefit from it, it's not considered like you own it really. But the Torah places, the Gemara says there are 2 things which are not really in your jurisdiction. And the Torah considers them to be in your jurisdiction. One of them is a pit that you dug in a street. It's not, the Torah considers it as if it is yours, even though it's not. You just dug a pit on Pico Boulevard, but you are responsible for it as if it's yours. Similarly, chametz on Pesach, though it's not really yours because you cannot benefit from it, therefore it's not considered to be yours as a regular item. However, the Torah places it in your rishus, but that's the Torah placing in your jurisdiction. And if you sold it, so then you could argue if you still own it now or not. However, if you bake the chametz on Pesach, what's the halacha? Can you burn it or not? So there's an argument. One opinion says that you could burn it. There's a biblical obligation to burn it. You have a mitzvah, you could do it. But the Alter Rebbe has a very interesting explanation why you can't do it. The second opinion. Alter Rebbe says like this. There's more than one way to burn the chametz. One way to get rid of the chametz. You don't have to burn it. You're also allowed to throw the chametz in the bathroom, into a toilet, to flush the chametz down the toilet. There's also another way of disposing of chametz, which is acceptable. And since there's no obligation to specifically burn it, therefore you're not allowed to burn it. Because you're only going to do something on Yontif to violate the Yontif, that which for the sake of a mitzvah. And it's just like you can't burn the noiser, burn the sacrifice, because you're able to do it tomorrow. You can't burn the chametz either because it's not the only way to get disposed of it. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe says you're not allowed to burn it. Can you throw it in the bathroom? You can't for a different reason. You can't throw it in the bathroom because it's muktzah. Since there's no benefit of this, it's muktzah. You're going to ask, is a biblical obligation to get rid of the chametz? Not just, there's 2 biblical obligations. There's a biblical obligation, tashbisu, a positive obligation to destroy the chametz. And there's a negative obligation, lo yireh lecha chametz, you're not allowed to own chametz. So l'chera, those obligations should override the prohibition of muktzah. However, the sages, chachamim, hamid devreim, they maintain their position, and it's one of the axioms of the Torah law. Chacham have the ability to uproot a law of the Torah and tell us not to do anything. Now, they can't tell us to go and eat some not kosher food. They can tell us to just be passive. And therefore, because of the law of muktzah, you are not allowed to go and to pick it up and throw it away. What about asking a non-Jew to do it? Asking a non-Jew is also a rabbinical prohibition. And they not allow us to do this rabbinical prohibition as well. It's interesting. But bottom line is that there are some scenarios where we're allowed to do things on Yontif, and there are some scenarios which are not. And people always use these blanket statements. Oh, it's Yontif, I'll do anything. You carry. You're not allowed to carry Yontif for no reason. Only the example in Halacha is not allowed to carry stones on Yontif, but there's no purpose. Or similarly, as I said before about you're carrying this key. Why are you carrying the key? Is it for the sake of Yontif or is it for the sake of after Yontif? And you have to ask that question. If there's a need for it, then there's a need for it. If there's not a need for it, then it's good to ask the question, but instead of just determining that it's okay. Any questions or comments, Yuda? Any questions or comments?
Yeah, on Friday, just Pesach, you wanted to make a motzi finish and a motzi on Friday night. And so you had leftover bread. So people would flush it down the
Correct. That's not muktzah yet, because you're allowed to eat it. So it's not muktzah. But once it comes Pesach,
making finish and a motzi.
I'm destroying it.
And here then you have leftover, you don't eat every bit of the bread that you the paint. So it was easy to get rid of the last.
Last the challah. It's amazing. Hashem asks the one thing and it says turn around, do the opposite. It's like a.
So that confuses a lot of people if they don't know.
Is it public enemy number one or is it a mitzvah? Which one is it?
So if someone wants to interpret it one way, you give them leniency, and another still wants to interpret another way. Why fight?
Well, I want to tell you one thing, and we'll conclude with this. My uncle Chaim Shalom, I don't have the letter, so I'm not sure the exact words that Rebbe used, but he wanted to leave yeshiva to go to his brother's bar mitzvah, and he asked the Rebbe if he should leave yeshiva. He was in Israel. And there was some halachic issue with him leaving. Right? The halachic issue is not important. There was some halachic issue with his leaving. And wrote to the Rebbe, for the sake of peace in the family, he thinks it would bring peace to the family if he would have come. He was like 16, peace in the family, what kind of peace in the family, whatever. But it wasn't like it was politics, like he was in yeshiva. I don't know why. He probably just thought of a good excuse. I don't know what he was thinking. That's what he wrote to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, since the Torah was given to make peace in the world, it cannot be that going in the long run, going with the way of Torah will not cause peace. So if the Torah says you should stay there, that will cause. That's something that we said before about Yom Kippur and the Erev, and you don't have to make everything up. Just follow the Torah. So the Torah says that will eventually bring to the. So I wouldn't say interpret things differently for each person. I wouldn't say that. That doesn't sound like something which is true. That sounds something which isn't true. It's applicable. There are situations the Torah itself says that there is a leniency, but that's because the Torah says a leniency. It's not because you could drive on Shabbos, you can't drive. The rules are rules, man. But we might.
You're making a start with the new battery operated vehicles.
Oh, here we go. All right. Yes, Yuda.
שאלה בקשר לילד בגיל 3 שצריך לעשות תספורת בל"ג בעומר, האם מותר לו לעשות את זה לפני שעשה ספירת העומר של ל"ג בעומר? זאת אומרת, בל"ב במקום בל"ג.
כן, ומה אתה אומר?
אני אומר שלא.
אתה אומר שלא?
אתה צריך לחכות שיהיה ל"ג.
אבל זה כבר ל"ג, למה אתה צריך לספור את זה?
הוא מתכוון לעשות את זה בין 6 ל-8, שזה עדיין ל"ב וזה לא ל"ג.
אבל לא חייב לספור את זה. ברגע שזה כבר ל"ג בעומר, אתה יכול לעשות את התספורת. למה אתה חייב לספור את זה? אולי, תודה רבה יהודה. בשורות טובות, הצלחה רבה, להתראות.